back to The Exchange by Evolution, a melting pot of ideas and inspiration shared by some of the most successful tech leaders. I'm Liyana, and I help connect businesses with tech talent, and today I'm your host. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the topic Organizational Change Management, preparing for a data-driven future. Joining me for the session is Freddie, Director of Data Science at Janssen & Johnson, and Siddhartha, Senior Manager of Data Science and Machine Learning at Carousell. So before we get into the discussion, just a quick disclaimer. All thoughts and views spoken by any of the speakers or myself are only representative of each individual and not that of their company. Thanks for being here, guys, and welcome to the podcast. Before you start, would you like to introduce yourselves and, a little bit about your background? Maybe Freddie, you can go first.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Freddie. So currently the Director of Data Science in Janssen & Johnson. So currently I'm leading the Asia Pacific commercial data science capabilities. So coming from a background that I did a PhD in NTU, so in statistical physics. So and then I moved to my first company, Garena. So where we are doing the game publishing. So we do a lot of data science models on this, prediction under like the behaviors of the gamers. Yeah, and then I changed the industry into the pharmaceutical as a MSP, a global pharmaceutical company. And then again, I have just the experience of trying to experience the really different industries. I moved to BCG, and then where I do have the experience of further, to experience what our different industries looks like. And then I just choose to stay to come back to the pharmaceutical industry. So currently landed in Johnson & Johnson. So I position myself as a data and technology. I'm passionate about data technology. So I'm especially interested in really trying to bring the innovation to the traditional organization. Mm-hmm. And then I really enjoy that. There's a lot of pain for sure, but I think there's a huge impact of doing that for our society.
Sure.
Well, thanks, Freddie, for sharing. It looks like a lot of diverse kind of an experience. For me, I've always been in online tech kind of companies. So I started about a decade ago working in the analytics space for airlines as well as retailers. So I worked in Sabre Airline Solutions for a while, basically optimizing airline schedules and revenue management for big airlines, followed by a stint with Oracle, where I worked on markdown optimization for retail giants across the world. Thereafter, I decided that, okay, maybe it's time for me also to pursue a PhD as well. So I ended up going to the US and did a PhD where my main focus was in the area of natural language processing. So that's something I was very, very interested in, understanding language. So I worked on automatic text summarization during my PhD work. After that, I worked for Yahoo in the Bay Area for a while. And then I moved to Singapore back in 2019 with a role at Traveloka. And then COVID happened. Everything Traveloka had all crashed. And that's when I moved to Carousell. So at Carousell, I currently lead a team of about 7 people. And it's a central data science team in the organization. So we cater to problems for various stakeholders across the company, be it the buyer experience team, where we primarily work on recommendation systems. From the seller side, we work on pricing, suggesting prices, understanding what's a good price, whether something is actually attractive or not. Ads has been one of the big areas of our investment last year, where we worked on optimizing ads based on the persona of the user visiting the platform, as well as their activity and all. We've also worked on trust and safety, which is a big area given the online marketplace and the immense number of scams that keep happening in entire Southeast Asia online marketplaces. So we always have to stay at the top of our game. So that's kind of like the broad range of problems we've been working on, and it's very exciting working in such a space where tech plays such a big role in all areas across the company.
Yeah. Thanks for that little introduction, guys. I think this will probably be an interesting episode for everyone. I mean, seeing as both of you have, such different experiences. So I guess let's just kick things off, right, with our first question, which is, I guess, to understand like the importance of data. Because in order to prepare for a data-driven future, I think it's essential to first understand, why is data so important. So maybe Freddie, you can get through it.
Yeah, I would like to view it as from a more philosophical way, and so because what I think that the data is democratizing science. Yeah, because if you see human history, we spend so many centuries just trying to understand things and figure out a standardized measurement and trying to get some theory out of it, right? But then just in recent decades, there's an explosion of technology and make the measurement everywhere. So the outcome of the measurement is the data. So now it's everywhere. You're using your phone, you're generating the data, you're going to use all the digital devices, every place you go, the cameras may be recording where you go. All these are data. So all this data actually provides the foundations for all this measurement. So everyone can be a scientist now. So if I have a business question, is my advertisement working or not? Is my drug effective or not in certain group? So I don't need to worry about previously where to find data. Now the data is everywhere. Everyone can be the scientist and trying to generate the theory and trying to generate the insights and action upon the insights, which we don't really need to rely on the expert telling us what is the best scenario, what is the best way to do. Everyone can be a scientist. So I think that is the whole meaning of data, and why this data is very important is generating this impact, and everyone is investing on that.
I would say continuing on the thread that you just mentioned, data is something that provides a lot of objectivity to every discussion, right? We start off with, okay, maybe this is something we want to have as an additional feature on our product, maybe 3 months down the line. Why do we need to have this feature? Why not feature number 2, feature number 3? All of that can be answered using data, right? You have proper dashboards, you look at user funnels where they're clicking, what things they are not happy about, and then figuring out what additional steps can we take to make sure users are engaging, or in a particular way we are solving particular problems, right? So I think at the end of the day, when we say that organizations need to be data driven, fundamentally it's about bringing objectivity to all discussions and decision making, without which I think we can just beat around the bush, just saying random stuff. But at the end of the day, we won't be able to measure anything, which is, I think, on your scientific sort of aspect, right? You were talking about the measurement aspect, which is, I think, critical.
Thanks for it. Some data is objective, things like that. But to some people, data is a new thing. Even though send our phones and things like that, they don't really think about it in there every day. So. And all change, I think, overcoming resistance is always a struggle, right? So, if your organization wants to be data-driven, right, adopting new technologies and processes is not going to be easy. So how would you advise, organizations to overcome such resistance?
I can both words, damn it. I think... fundamentally, the change, right, has to be sort of a top-down to begin with. At the highest level, right, folks need to be aligned that we need to be data-driven, right, and bring about that culture of change. It's not going to happen in a single day, right? It's going to take a lot of effort, but everything needs to have that focus that data is going to answer why we are going to do something. Data is going to answer how we are going to measure something. Data is going to let us create amazing user experiences in cases of scientific manufacturing sort of industries. It might be like how experiments are done, how drugs are designed, for example. In the context of like online internet businesses, it might be how to design a particular feature to encourage more users engage. And once that starts happening, right, like at the topmost level, kind of trickling down, ensuring that at every stage, everybody needs to be answerable with respect to data. You just write a statement that, okay, we anticipate 5 to 8% increase, but why? Why is that going to be 5 to 8% and not 2 to 3%? Show me with data. Show me with like proper statistics, confidence intervals, that this is what we are going to expect in the next, say, few weeks or months, without which I think such a change is not going to happen. So that's kind of how I see things kind of moving in that direction. And it's sometimes a big challenge because certain teams, right, even within like tech companies, certain teams might be like very business focused, where their fundamental notion is to like get things done, right? We will operationalize this. I think it's important for data teams also at times to kind of make sure that we understand their problems more closely. And if we can understand their problems more closely, I think you would be able to suggest solutions, suggest how we can work together and make things happen. And that is no more, I would say, top down, but at every level when they realize that it is going to be fundamentally data driven for whatever we do.
Yeah, totally agree. So especially, I mean, coming from like more of a traditional industry background, this is actually quite a big topic and quite a big pain point for us. Yeah, and also see a lot of different companies are suffering the same problems, how to be like this data driven, how to embrace the changes. So like some of my observations actually is it's actually a lot of people, although it's the traditional industry, is a lot of people actually is quite eager to embrace the changes using the new technologies and embrace the data. But there's a lot of, limitations in terms of what they can do. I mean, given the regulations and privacies, and also like for pharma, like given the scale of its size, I mean, there's a lot of interdependencies, and they're like people's like the teams, their power are being decentralized, right? So there hardly can be any like this kind of holistic view of what is happening and what is the breakthrough point that we can drive the whole changes. So there's a lot of this kind of interdependencies. So my view is that I think those for this kind of like traditional industry, that the breakthrough, I think, it won't come from a single point. All right, it comes from like we need to constantly like improving the data digital literacy of all the people working in this ecosystem, and then trying to improve every every point in this value chain. And gradually, when the whole level reaches to that, the innovation will just naturally emerges gradually. So that's what I see actually quite important in this traditional industry. So we're just not able to move as fast as you guys.
I mean, how do you even like overcome this resistance to change? Like it might be like a very, very big deal, right? In a company as large as yours, where there are multiple units, it's not lean. How do you kind of even think about orchestrating a change?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, recently with the ChatGPT, right, so we are discussing, say, like the Microsoft is beating the Google. It's not because that Google is not advanced in technology, but there's a lot of the management decisions, right? So how do they keep the traditional advertisement, the business model continue to work? There's also a lot of this kind of similar things happening in other like traditional industries like in us. So I think a lot of time we really require some fresh blood from external industries, and really try to drive this mindset change. And a lot of time the consultancy, external consultant also helps a lot in terms of helping to drive the change. But then it takes a lot of time to just get people aligned. But eventually, when every people realize how important it is, like for data, and then just we see the organization start to hire chief digital officers, building all this data science team. It may take an iterative process. They may fail. And then after a few years, they just start the semester all over again. But eventually, they're moving slowly to the good direction.
I think like you raised a good point about like iterations over iterations.
Yeah.
I think I like follow this very strongly that any step you take towards like maybe solving a new problem, right? Starting small, get the quick wins as soon as possible. And once you convince like your stakeholders that, okay, we can actually solve a part of it using data, I think there is always more buy-in, and then you can proceed more easily and there will be less resistance, right?
Yeah, that's especially important for us. I mean, need a business by gradually change their mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's not something that happens overnight. Definitely it takes time. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned a little bit, right, Freddie, about improving digital literacy. So how can, I guess, these businesses communicate the benefits and goals of transitioning into more data-centric to all employees and, not just those that are in the data space, because this might be something new to them, right?
Yeah. As Steve mentioned, there's really a lot of this small effort constantly showing this value to the stakeholders. What we think is the most important is actually to create this, it's a convenient experience for those people to really use data, because they need some incentive. So if their experience with data is, I have a lot of, actually they're all thirsty for data, because there's a lot of business questions, why this drug doesn't work, why this caused adverse event, everything, they need a lot of data. But if their experience with using the data is, I need to approach that team, and I need to clear the TDS privacy compliance process, and I need to wait for several weeks for that team to prepare the data for us, and then eventually it doesn't work and it takes iterations. Mm-hmm. In that case, they will rely on other resource, and then they will say, I don't think it works. I just rely on my own ways of working. That creates a vicious cycle that people eventually don't want to use. So I think, but now a lot of investment, people realize that a lot of investment is being put on the technology, on this data management, etc., and try to. Also, I do see a lot of external parties trying to provide data systems and trying to, just trying to make the whole data usage much simpler. So that actually, I see is there's a virtual cycle is being provided that, you use the data, you generate some insights that everyone's happy, and you start to more rely on that. Also, people are more incentivized to learn those technology tools, like those BI tools, some simple Python. A lot of businesses interested in learning that, and they're really trying to make a difference.
That's really interesting to know, because for us data scientists, I think trying to answer something based on data, our main idea is, okay, we'll go to the database wherever our data store is, we might run some query, however complex it is, and it's okay because that's something we do for bread and butter, so it's kind of straightforward. But then the actual stakeholders who are end users of the outcomes of that data and all, if they do not have a good quality self-service tool to actually see how to play around that data and figure out insights, it's probably of no use. So I think the thing that you mentioned around newer tools, data management, sort of ways coming up that can really help people answer questions, and people are also being very proactive in learning new technologies. I think that's something which is really necessary. And if there is resistance towards that, I think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But Sid, have you encountered any of this problem of helping others understand how to shift more towards the data side?
My experience is, given it's mostly been in tech companies, I haven't really faced extremes.
Yeah.
But there is always cases around like discussing something with like individuals, maybe from the product teams, and trying to understand first why we are doing something in the first place, right? There are certain ideas, but which idea to prioritize, which might have the maximum impact. And there is always some level of impact estimation that can be done with data, right? So understanding that and then proceeding in a way that we are able to like spend our resources in the best possible manner, because resources at the end of the day are limited. You can never solve all the problems you have at hand. So that sort of discussions definitely go on. I've been, I would say, lucky to be part of organizations where data was kind of fundamental in answering everything. In the tech industry, that's sort of a given. However, sometimes we assume a bit too much. I think we have to stop doing that at times and try to answer it again with data.
Yeah, it's always actually a discussion within ourselves. How do we learn from the tech companies, why they're so successful? I mean, that's actually, we're quite eager to actually learn from others.
But I mean, earlier you guys mentioned about learning a bit of Python, a bit of like Power BI or something like that. But you know, some people, they have day jobs. How would you suggest these people spend their time? Because you know, some of them may not have the time to like read articles, or they might not even understand, right? Whatever you're reading in the data space. So yeah, how would you, I guess, initiate this change? And yeah.
I mean, okay, I can go first. Sure. Yeah. So in general, I think blindly learning something doesn't really help. Like, okay, I'll sit today and I'll learn some new tech. I think it's always better if you have a problem at hand and you are trying to solve something, and because of that, your learning is actually helping that happen. I think that is where the focus kind of stays. Okay, like if I am able to learn this piece within like a couple of days, I might be able to answer part of this question. And that interest, the solutions, when they keep coming out, you are able to kind of understand, oh, I am able to answer certain questions in this possible way. Then I think that interest kind of automatically comes in, and then that person is able to like learn even more, maybe that specific technology, going a bit into the advanced levels, or maybe certain like sister tech, which might actually help in broadening the horizons of answering those questions. For me, I think fundamentally, even if I try to like learn something totally new, it doesn't like happen if I'm not motivated enough. Having a problem at hand gives me that motivation. For example, like I've been only working on like, let's say Python, SQL, and certain elements of stack with like machine learning tools like TensorFlow or PyTorch and things like that. But then I do think that for me to broaden my horizons in this entire data space, for me to at least be able to understand elements on, let's say, business intelligence or data analytics, it's also important for me to understand the basics of the tools that are used, like on dashboards and all. But I can never convince myself to just go and learn without a specific use case. So when there has been certain use cases, I ended up like learning a bit on those tech. But otherwise, I think it's practically impossible.
And when I'm looking at this question at a longer time span in terms of upskilling people's skill, so we see that younger generations, those new generations from the university, a lot of them actually can use Python, the programming languages, all these tools quite efficiently compared with our generations or the generations before, right? So from a longer term, that's a natural like upskilling. So they may not end up everyone's data scientist, not possible, but it turns out that a lot of the people with the data skills being landed into other kind of different jobs. And that's actually it's actually what we want to do right now, right? We're training the other functions, the people from other functions to do Python, but maybe 10 years later, they will naturally with the skill sets of all this data analytics.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. And I mean, to do this whole like organizational change management, it's a big thing. It's not, again, we discussed, it's not something that happens overnight. And I think it's important to develop like a data strategy, right? So in order to use data to make decision making effective, right? How can they identify, I guess, what sort of data is most relevant to their business goals? And how would you, I guess, give advice to this situation? Yeah.
Probably I can go first, right? So, like for us, for our industry, the healthcare is people are thirsty for data. So, actually, there's a 1/3 of the data generated healthcare data. It's just they're so scattered everywhere within the research institutions, hospitals, this different places. So, and then what I see is that we're trying to answer all these questions in terms of our patient, our doctors, etc., in terms of this disease. So they actually know kind of what kind of data they want, and then they're looking for that. So one of the trend I see is that the more and more utilization of the non-traditional data set. Like just imagine previously the healthcare people, they're like measuring your like blood pressure, measuring your temperature, etc. Those very basic things for the diagnosis, for the monitoring. But now we do see the emergence, actually the use of a lot of non-traditional data. Like for example, previously there's no good way of identifying Alzheimer's disease in early stage, but now there's a research using the speech data as the biomarker that we can predict this Alzheimer in a very early stage. Just imagine in the future, right, we can easily do a 3D scanning of our whole body. We can know every cell within our body, how does that interact, and how our like the blood flows, everything. Then actually a lot of things are much easier in terms of understanding the disease. Even like the TV series, The Westworld, we can predict your behaviors, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like, it involves a bit of like thinking outside of the box, with regards to approaching and coming up with a business strategy and data strategy. But are there like some common pitfalls to avoid? And then would you like how not to go about planning your data strategy, perhaps?
That's a pretty interesting question. We rarely think about counter examples, I guess.
A little better.
I think especially in like smaller organizations, right, where I've worked, I think it's definitely good to have a data strategy around the various elements, right? What are the major areas we would be investing in? What are we trying to like learn from this data? What are the specific areas we would be monitoring actively? What are our key metrics, right? Over weeks or days, whatever we are monitoring. What are the key alert systems we'll create, right? So strategies around those are fundamentally very important. But I think it's also important to keep in mind that, especially with respect to like smaller organizations, where a lot of these ideas are just ideas, right? We might end up implementing something, experimenting, let's say running A/B tests and all, and we realize things fail. Then what do you do? Do you go back and change your data strategy elements massively, or do you make smaller changes? So kind of in a data strategy, making sure that what are the definitely like the priority 0 level ones, right? Those cannot be compromised on. But what are the things where there should be certain level of like flexibility that they might have to be changed, let's say 3 months down the line. So that level of flexibility and the buffer needs to be accounted for, right? But there would be some elements which no matter what you do, you fail or whatever, those stay intact, right? So kind of that needs to be, I think, accounted for while coming up with these strategies. a lot of strategies around when we, as let's say, a particular company is venturing out into different markets. Now, whether the metrics that you are kind of already monitoring in a particular market, are they going to be the same, or are there different sort of behaviors expected? Then do you introduce something new in those markets? And all those are some of the things we need to like think about right away, right? And because, for example, like Carousell operates in let's say Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and so on. Like, are there subtle differences in the markets? There are governments which have different rules and regulations across online marketplaces, things that we need to monitor. There are issues around like difference of languages. So are there specific like things, let's say we have a particular threshold on a particular model in a particular market. Is that going to be like particularly different as to how we detect fraud in a different market? Things around those. These need to be like considered right away when we are thinking about like long-term strategies around market expansions.
Okay, sounds like you need flexibility, and it's like it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, definitely. Yeah. Okay, and earlier you mentioned about third-party sites, right, Freddie, or like third-party platforms to help with the data and everything, right? How can businesses choose the most appropriate tools for their needs?
So that's also a challenge in the traditional industries, that they just spend incredible amount of money just buying the different tech stacks. Different teams are using the different standards, and then just end up like it's very hard to maintain, very hard to manage. So one of the thing that is very important for those companies is really trying to standardize all the data tools and the end-to-end like single platforms. So currently it's still at I have to say it's the developing stage of all these data technologies, but we do see the competitive landscape is emerging. So like say we see some Databricks, all this kind of tools is gradually standing out, and really tries to make the whole data processing, the all AI, ML, everything much easier. So what I foresee is that in next 2 to 3 years, probably even faster. So we'll see the winners, or the industry standard will gradually be established. At a time, I think it can be probably it's a lesser issue. So there will be like mature like data tech stacks end to end. You can just implement, and the cost maintenance will be much easier.
Okay.
Yeah, on the same Ryan, I think communication is key across groups. Within the technology organization, I think we have this culture of like monthly sharing of something new that the team has built, and it might be helpful for a different team as well, right? And maybe the other team is trying to figure out some details, but they might see certain similarities and they take help from the team that has already used a particular platform and have found good value out of it. Without proper communication, I think these are done in silos, and then it ends up happening like, okay, the same kind of things are being done by different teams, but using different sort of tools, where I think information sharing becomes a problem, because the teams cannot help each other because they are totally using different tools. So I think communication is of vital importance in this regard. Sometimes I think when we are considering these tools, right, one decision that has to be made is whether we build it in-house or buy it from outside. And buying is always it's not that buying is always costlier than building it in-house. You also need to pay significant amount of money to engineers, right? So at the end of the day, I think what matters is like, can we get to a relative level of, I would say, satisfaction with something that already exists in the market? Maybe just take it, get some custom support from them and have it ready that serves our purpose, or do we need enough control to be able to control that from our end, right? So that's kind of the decisions, and also how much are we willing to invest. For example, there are probably tools that allow experimentations in the machine learning space, tracking those. But for us who experiment a lot for like online with online populations, releasing features to like certain groups and trying out and seeing statistical sort of metrics, I think at times it became important that we would have to build something in-house so that we are able to like use it longer term without worrying much about like the cost aspect, and also introduce new features to it from time to time. So that's what like a decision went into, like, okay, we'll build that in-house, for example. But for a different use case, it might be different depending on like the requirements.
This is quite an interesting discussion, actually, always ongoing. So whether in-house versus the, just buying from third parties.
That's also some of the mindset change that from like our industries we need to constantly push for, because financially it's easier to manage just outsourcing everything, but you lose the control. You actually lose a lot of the detailed understanding and the chance opportunities for building up the knowledge in-house.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think at the end of the day, with all of this, change management, moving towards a data-driven future, finding the right talent is definitely not easy, right? So what are some key leadership skills that you feel are necessary, for effective change management?
Probably I can start first. So in terms of the leadership, I think this process definitely is a leading through the ambiguity, because with such a scale, with this kind of a lot of this kind of interdependencies, so not only this agility to adapt to the change and embrace the new technologies is quite important. Last year, when we are doing a business plan, we don't know the ChatGPT, but then suddenly it appeared, and then it brings a lot of change. And for tech companies, they may just immediately go to adapt it. But for the traditional industries, there's a lot of process and taken for us to do that. So that's actually the leadership skill that is required. How to lead the people through the ambiguity and solve the problem that just suddenly appeared, and then achieve the goal that we planned. So in terms of the talent, so I think the key is just absorbing more fresh blood from the tech companies, from those more digital savvy places. That can really change a lot of the mindset of people, because people need to see the power of this technology in order to believe that and really invest in that. Although they are looking at this news flying every day about the ChatGPT, about this AI, but if they don't feel it, they still are very reluctant to invest in that.
Yeah, I think in general, ambiguity is definitely one of the critical aspects, making sure you navigate around it well. And there are too many things that can be done, right? But choosing the right track, what specific talent you are looking for, that kind of needs to be answered. Fundamentally, it's not always about the functional skills, right? Everybody will know how to use Python, right? Everybody will know to use SQL, for example. But at the end of the day, I think curiosity of how we can answer important questions with data, and how we present, the storytelling aspect, right? Those are, to me, I think, the fundamental key attributes we try to look at, right? Functional skills, as I mentioned, like coding and all, there might be differences, subtle differences, like somebody is an exceptional coder, writes very optimized code, but at times it might not be that necessary. But then drilling the pieces of the data and coming down to the bottom, and then conclusively say that, yes, this is it, with proper maybe description, proper definitions, proper assumptions called out. I think that is fundamental. So when we are thinking about making data-driven organization, and answering everything with data, I think these are like sort of fundamental things that cannot be compromised on in any candidate we would look at.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, I think if we start talking about finding the right talent, we can go on and on. I think it might be best to put it on a separate topic. So,
And there's definitely no easy answer to that.
yeah. So, I think that's about all the time that we have for today. So, thank you to both of you guys for speaking on this and providing us with all the insights and knowledge on this topic. And thank you too to our lovely audience for tuning in. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. And we'll see you again next time when we discuss another hot topic on the exchange by evolution. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.